we'll do a couple of sort of hypothetical sort of scenarios to let you know who's heard of Hiera. Wiggle your arm. What's that? Half-ish? Okay, half the room. Good. Right. Well, I think I'm in the right room in that case. So we've got a couple of different scenarios. You've got a situation where you want to install a web server. You think, for you. There's three different components that we're concerned of, or concerned about being sysadmins traditionally. We've got packages, which we're just talking about there. We've done a bit of an install thing. We've got configuration files that we need to tiddle around with, and then we've got the services that we need to look after as well. So in the bad old days, or when you're not using some form of configuration management, you'd maybe write up a little bash script or something like that, which would do that stuff for you, and everybody's happy that your customer thinks that you're a champion. So you go back the next day to do a little bit of testing, and the customer sort of kind of goes, all right, I've just had a quick word with a couple of my team leads, and it turns out that I told you they would just use RHEL. Well, that wasn't strictly true. We use a bit of Oracle Linux in there as well, just to add a little bit of spice, and we've got a few Ubuntu boxes, just to add a little bit of extra je ne sais quoi in the equation. So your little scripts that you've written up have got yum install HTTPD in them. And I wonder if we can see that there's a couple of challenges that are associated with Debian-based operating systems. Okay, Debian, completely different package management. It uses apt instead of the RPM. What sort of time do you call this for coming? I don't know. So Debian Ubuntu, it's all about apt. And because there was some, I do apologise for picking on you there. I'm not really that sorry, just a little bit. Because there are humans that are involved with this naming convention, with Debian-based distros, of course, the web server package is not called HTTPD, it's called Apache or Apache 2. Yeah. So now you think to yourself, okay, we can cope with this, but we need to expand our little script a bit to do something sort of kind of similar to that. You need to build in some intelligence to try and work out what your platform is, and if your platform is Linux or if your platform is Ubuntu, then let your web server package be equal to this, and your install directory is equal to this, and it all starts to get really quite nasty and complex. To give you another sort of parallel example, and I'm sure that everybody in this room is not going to understand what I'm talking about at all, but maybe you've read about situations where people have put together scripts and they've done the unthinkable, which is called hard coding IP addresses, for example. Right? Have any of you read about situations like this? Maybe one or two of you. And maybe they're probably most of mixed scripts that you've been reading about. All these hard-coded IPs.
No, I hard code our own mine.
So it's not a fantastic idea. You get yourself into all this, if, then, else. My God, my head's going to explode. Okay, so from a Puppet perspective, you can make exactly the same mistakes. Has anybody not touched Puppet before in the room? All right, there's a few of you. Okay, this is how you probably shouldn't do things, just in case you're scribbling down notes furiously on this one. You could make exactly the same sort of parallel mistakes when you put together the Puppet manifests or the rule sets that Puppet will enforce on your target nodes. You could try and sort of detect if the operating system is equal to CentOS or Scientific Linux or Oracle Linux or whatever, then your web server is equal to blah. Otherwise, if it's Ubuntu, then it's equal to something else, and it all gets really quite horrible and nasty. So you could do it that way, but there's probably a little more simplistic way of doing it, which hopefully we'll get to just in 2 seconds. Okay, so it's all about how can we take this data out of the actual modules. out of the actual Puppet code itself, such that we've got a centralized repository of all of the data that we need on a per environment basis, on a per site basis. You know, some of you have got multiple data centers in different states, you know, different geographies, for example. Now, sometimes the data is different. Typically, the data would be different in each of those data centers. They've got, you know, unique bits about them. So if we can extract this data, and then maybe just in our Puppet code, we can just make a call to a variable and have Puppet look up that variable automatically for you. And Puppet, because it's smarter than your average bear, will be able to automatically know where it is in your hierarchy. If it's in this data center, it's in your UAT environment, and it's going to look for a variable that's called your NTP servers, but paying attention to where it is in your infrastructure and only give you back the relevant data. So, who am I talking to here? I'm talking to the Puppet noobs. Because using Hiera is it can make your life a hell of a lot more simplistic. Using Hiera can make your Puppet code a hell of a lot cleaner, an awful lot more compressed, and an awful lot more supportable. So if any of you are just thinking about the concept of bringing Puppet on board, I'd probably suggest that those attributes that I just mentioned will probably be pretty useful for you. And your boss is going to be thanking you as well for making those sort of considerations. And I'm also talking to the guilty. You know who you are, the way that you've written your manifest. Maybe you've written your manifest. I'm looking at you. You're looking quite guilty over there. Yeah, you are. And that wasn't Nick I was pointing to for a change. You know who you are. You know you've maybe had you've had your Puppet code for the last 4 or 5 years. You've been nurturing it. You've been tickling under the chin. You've been giving it a shine every now and then. But you know that you've got your hard-coded data in there, and you could do with a spot of refactoring.
You dirty early adopter, you.
Yeah, exactly. We love you. We love you, really. Okay. Anybody got any questions so far? Fantastic. Keep it that way. That's really good. Okay, so what is all this Hiera claptrap I'm talking about? Hiera is it's all about externalized data, and it's a hierarchical, pluggable information store, for want of a better phrase. So Hiera is able to back-end onto a number of different data sources. You can also write your own backends for Hiera. So if you keep all of your data in like a MySQL database, that's cool. Puppet can automatically look into MySQL to grab, to match up data pairs. It can look in straightforward files. It can look in JSON. It can look in YAML files. What else? LDAP. Blah 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 blah. There's HTTP. It's very very flexible, and if you have got some really obscure little data source at your place, then you can write your own interface onto it as well. And that's the way that you do that is it's pretty well documented. Included with Puppet Enterprise, with the latest Puppet freebie, is Hiera's all pre-compiled in there. It's a prereq these days. Sorry, that sounded like a statement. It was actually a question. Puppet 3, it's a prereq and it's always there, isn't it? Yeah, okay. I need to update the slide a bit. It used to be like a gen install thing. So it's already there. Yeah, you don't need to do anything. There's a tiny little bit of configuration that you need to do in what's known as the Hiera.yaml file, and we're just going to come on to that just in 2 seconds. So, yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
Is Hiera trying to replace the external node classifier type concept from earlier version?
No, not really. There was external lookup. XLOOKUP is sort of kind of where Hiera's taking off. It's not about you can actually use Hiera to do the same thing as an ENC. So you can actually put all of your classes for your nodes into Hiera. And then Puppet will suck in all of the classes that are required per node from a Hiera backend. So it sort of kind of uses Hiera as its ENC.
That's what I was trying to get.
Yeah. You could do it. It's not, there are some people that do that. There's a few big companies in the city that, that do that. It's not massively sort of common. Does anybody use Hiera to do the classification? Yeah?
It's much easier.
Okay. Cool. So we've got one. Yeah, an example. Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so how does Hiera work? Hiera is pre-compiled in there. It's all ready to use. Its main configuration file is called hiera.yaml. Yet another markup language, in case anybody's wondering what the YAML stuff's all about. It's just plain text, and the syntax is not particularly complex. I come from like a sort of Opsy background, as I mentioned, so anything to do with heavy stuff, I generally get very, very scared and start running, and I haven't sort of run too fast away from this stuff yet. So as we can see, it's a hierarchical lookup system. So Hiera will traverse all of the different data stores that you specify under the hierarchy. And you can have multiple different data stores that Hiera will traverse. Now, you'll notice here that there is an attribute called backend, and there's a couple of little examples in there just now. This is telling Hiera where should I look, or rather, in what data sources should I look. So out of the box, the default is YAML. So it's just a straightforward text file. There's a whole bunch of other backends that I just discussed. There's the MySQL bit, there's the JSON bit. You'll see that there's one up there called eYAML, and we'll come back to that just in 2 seconds. So all you need to do, typically, to get Hiera up and kicking, is to update this data directory to point to wherever you keep your YAML files. Because by default, it's looking under /user/lib Puppet or something. I'm a Puppet Enterprise guy, ice systems. We do the Puppet Enterprise, so I know about the accepted Puppet Labs path. I don't know about that filthy other free version. No. Okay, so that's generally the only bit that you'll need to pay attention to. And then we need to create some data source files, so actual YAML files. So I think, as chance would have it, I may have an example on the next slide. No, I don't. I'm telling you, first of all, how to use it from command line. Okay, so even though you know what Hiera is, I still find through talking to a few people that understanding how to debug Hiera, so how to run it from command line to make sure that when you're asking Hiera for a particular variable, that you get the expected answer back. So rather than having to fluff around with Puppet doing that, why not just do it from command line? Much quicker. So I've given you a couple of little clues here. So what I've done is this section at the top here is from my hiera.yaml file, and it specifies the hierarchy that Puppet will traverse in order. So you'll notice that the first line there, this is just a cheeky but not pretentious little example. And what it's doing is it's looking under wherever your Hiera data directory was, your etc. Puppet Labs, Hiera data, or wherever you put it. There's going to be a subdirectory called nodes. And who can sort of kind of take a bit of a guess as to what this is?
Fully qualified domain name. Open up the file.yaml.
Not bad for a wild guess, that man over there. Okay, so if your host is called web server, whatever, your fully qualified domain name is called web server. How about that for a tragedy? Then what Hiera is going to look for under the nodes directory is a YAML file with the same name. So it's going to be, if your fully qualified domain name is web server, then it's going to be webserver.yaml. So it's going to look in there first, yeah, because I've read about situations again, and I'm sure you've been reading the same books, that sometimes you get boxes that are sort of kind of snowflakey. There's a few bits that are a bit special about it, and this is how you accommodate specialness for specific nodes. Okay, but the bit that I've put a little example around is doing the operating system here. Now, keep in mind that all of these percentage, namespace, FQDN, and operating system, it's all based on a little program under the hood that basically makes Puppet function. It's called Factor, F-A-C-T-E-R. So if I was to go to the command line on a box that's got Puppet installed, I'm going to type in Factor, F-A-C-T-E-R, I'll repeat it again, space operating system, or Factor space FQDN, or just type in Factor and hit return. You'll get a whole bunch of information back. So Puppet knows what operating system you're actually running on. When the Puppet agent comes to life, it runs Factor, and it gathers all of this information. It then passes all this stuff back to your Puppet master, if that's the way that you've got your environment engineered. So, Puppet, when it's asked about operating system, that's fine. It knows what it is. So it's going to look for a YAML file again, which is called whatever Factor operating system outputs. Could be Ubuntu, could be Red Hat, can't remember if it's Red Hat off the top of my head, but ubuntu.yaml in your Hiera data directory. Okay, so just a little example here. If we type in Factor space operating system, this was off this little chap as I was whizzing together some of the slides a little bit earlier. If I do Factor space operating system on a Mac, it's going to give me Darwin or whatever the particular flavor of operating system is. Now, I mentioned that up here, we're looking for whatever that operating system is .yaml. So down here, you can see I've catted the Darwin.yaml file, and I can see that there is a data pair. There's a variable called web server, and there's the answer to that, and I've just called it HTTPD for Apple, just to be simplistic, because that's the way my brain works. No idea what it is for Apple, and I don't care. I'm telling the truth. Okay, so I've cat the Darwin.yaml file, and it's got web server is equal to that. But when I go to command line and do Hiera of web server, what would you expect is going to come back? It's answers the same. You know, you'd expect it because it's going to traverse down here. There's no node-specific stuff. It's going to go down to Darwin.yaml, and we know that Darwin.yaml down here, it should return HTTPD for Apple. Hang on a second, but it's returned Apache 2. Okay, so this highlights a classic mistake when people start to debug Hiera at command line. Anytime in your hierarchy that you've got these facts, which are easily identifiable, they've got the percentage, colon, blah, you need to specify the facts on the command line to be able to debug Hiera accurately. Okay, so we can see down here that we need to feed Hiera this fact when testing. So we need to tell it what the operating system is. Don't make any assumptions that it's going to know the value of that operating system when you're testing with Hiera. It's a little bit counterintuitive because you'd expect Hiera to know about the operating system that it's already on. You just got to be aware of this, and this is a common source of mistake.
Very default behavior.
It's a little bit on the dim side, but there's a couple of ways that you can undim it.
Can you, rather than having to specify an operating system Darwin and everything else,
Yep.
is there a flag to say use Factor to get this stuff? Because I don't remember it.
I don't know of any. I know that you can either specify on command line, which can be a pain in the gluteus maximus, especially if you're specifying many facts. But what you can also do is to put all these fact pairs into a file. So if you're doing some testing, you can have a file which you can do Hiera space, and I forget what the actual syntax is, but it reads in all of your facts from files, which can help, help sort of expedite a bit. But yeah, it's a bit dim, and it's really easy to make this mistake. Yeah.
Even Windows has environment versions. I mean, I'm told.
What is that? Oh, that's right, that legacy operating system. I always forget about it.
The one that sells really well,
Yeah, that's the one. Touché. Yeah, what do I say other than I'm trying to help you? I mean, you're being very ungrateful. And beware, I have a laser in my hand.
I'm trying to help you, sir.
Okay, so the way that we actually specify and do the Hiera lookups from command line, we do Hiera space, whatever the name of the variable is you want to look up in the second argument, or first argument, second place. Then you can follow it up with all of the facts that you want to specify. Okay, so we can see here that when I actually specified what the operating system was, it did actually look in the darwin.yaml file and it spat out the correct answer. Has anybody got any, I hate to say this, any questions? No, I've had all the ragging already. Oh no, there's more ragging to come.
So in your example there, when you didn't specify the operating system, where is it getting attribute from the common.yaml?
Okay, good question. Yep. I mean, just till on back. A random thing that's over there. What it's done, I didn't actually put this down on the slide, but in my common.yaml file, I had web server equals whatever Apache 2. So it's gone down, it's completely ignored, it's looked under nodes, it's completely ignored the operating system thing because it was not fed in that fact, and it's gone to common.yaml at the end. Now, keep in mind that you can actually specify directory structures in here as well, just to give you a little flavor of what's possible. So, for instance, you may have a fact which is percentage state or region, and then under that you'll have a slash, and then you'll maybe have I don't know, city or data center, and then another subdirectory under that, which is prod test UAT dev. So you can actually have automated lookup down different directory structures according to the facts that are running on your box. Does that make sense? So, yeah.
So does it try and evaluate any of those if it doesn't have, say, FQDN or the operating system? Is it just going to ignore the entries, or is it just going to collapse into something done like minutes, like say those slash nothing?
Good question. And the answer's just come up. It's like only a mother can tell us apart. We're on the same page. I just couldn't hear your Scottish accent there. Okay, so we've done a bit of that. That's fine. Hiera debugging. Okay, Hiera's giving me the. Am I allowed to say the shits here or not? Nope. Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
So you say whatever the fuck you want.
Except for shit. Okay, fair enough. So Hiera's giving me the shits. He said it was alright. How can I find out what the hell Hiera's doing? Where's it looking? Why is it looking in there? Why is it giving me the answer that it's giving me because it's the wrong one? Okay, so your pal on that one is shove minus debug on the end. Okay, if you do a minus debug, then we can see it traverses the hierarchy as specified in the hiera.yaml file. And it goes blah, 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 looking for data sources, cannot find nodes, so it can't find the fqdn.yaml file. Looks down, looking for a source called Darwin, which is the percentage operating system fact. And it found that, and it found web server in darwin.yaml and returned it. So, handy one just for helping you understand what's going on in the deep and devious mind of Hiera when it's doing its lookups. Okay, what about arrays? Arrays of stuff. I don't know how readable that is, but what I've got up there, I've got a little data entry, a variable called my admin users and my admin groups. and I've specified a couple of little things using YAML array syntax in there. So I've got a user in there called Simon, there's a user in there called Stephen, and there's some groups in there as well of the same name. So can Hiera ingest this sort of stuff, and does it understand it? Job done. So Hiera can and does understand how to suck in arrays of data.
Your passwords be on the screen?
Yeah.
Where? Where is it? How to make twice as much fun. There we go. You did give me a look at them. Where are the passwords? Okay, moving on. This is called heckling the first timer. Well, the first timer issue. Okay, so let's move on. So Puppet 3 has this thing called automated data bindings, which basically means that if you don't tell it otherwise, and Puppet will automatically try to expand our. What time is this?
That's the bartender.
Puppet will automatically try to look up variables and try to find an answer for that or a value for that variable that you're looking at. It traverses the hierarchy until it finds the first match, and then it bombs. Okay, so just keep that in mind as well. Okay, so that's when we do this sort of kind of syntax, we can do like a $real web server is equal to Hiera lookup on the variable called web server. It's going to traverse the hierarchy in the Hiera.yaml file, and it's going to do a Hiera lookup just like we did on the command line for a variable called web server, and it's going to return the value. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We can do it in a slightly safer way, perhaps, which involves using defaults. So we can do the Hiera lookup on the actual variable name. If you put a comma and then a value, then Hiera will default to that if it cannot expand the variable called web server. So this might be useful in this style scenario. You know, if $web server is not equal to nil, then install the package. So you've got an awful lot more control over, you know, you are specifically managing what you're specifically managing, and you're not doing something dopey like putting a comma and HTTPD in there as a default. That's clearly not going to work in everything. Yeah.
So is nil meant to be in quotes there, or do I have to write?
I think it does need to be right. I think there's like a couple of different, maybe not on that one. There's nil and there's another one that you can put in there, which I don't think that you do need to, and it will interpret that as false. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so you're talking an awful lot of claptrap, Wallace. You're telling me all about Hiera, how can I actually use it in Puppet. How can I actually take these YAML files, take your Hiera waffle that you've been doing from command line, and actually do something productive with it. Typical little examples there. How do I install a list of packages on all of my Red Hat boxes, my Ubuntu boxes? How can I absolutely assure that there's a list of programs that will definitely never be installed, as in uninstall, telnet, all of your old sort of security risks? How do I do that across all of my boxes? How do I install a bunch of named users that are appropriate? How do I remove everybody else? Okay, so a sneaky clue. I'll let you stare at it and absorb it for a minute. Is a minute up there? Here it is. Okay, so there's a little example of a class which you could use. Just it's reasonably self-explanatory. Says in having been doing this stuff for a while. What we're doing is we're taking like variables called $groups and $users, and we're doing a Hiera lookup for them. So what it's going to do, it's going to do the Hiera lookup on the myadmin users, and it's going to get that array of users passed back from Hiera, just like we did on command line. And if there's nothing returned, then it's going to fail. this is the best way. You should never, in your modules, you should try and never use defaults as like that. Best practice definitely dictates this. Manage what you manage what you know about, and fail if your box does not match that criteria. Don't put defaults in. There's a very well-known story of a very large institution not too far from here. I'm certainly not going to mention the name just in case there's any employees. However, there was a bit of a puppet run that happened. There was an error with somebody putting in defaults, and it ended up all of their test servers had the IP address changed to 1.1.1.1, which is very economical as far as IP addresses go. I'm not really too sure that it worked from like a networking perspective though. Yeah, so that was Puppet's fault, by the way. Anyway, moving along. Okay, so don't use defaults. Fail is the best sort of practice. And down here, what we've got for every one of those elements that comes back from the array, we use create resources to create all of the users and create all of the groups. So it'll suck in the 500 users that you want to create. It's a bad example, perhaps, but it just gives you a bit of an idea on how to manage and modify multiple lists and lists of users. So you could do the same thing for packages for a specific Rel 6, Rel 5, Oracle. If you've got some specific packages, you can install them all at once very efficiently using this with that tiny little bit of code. I wish I could take the spaces out of that and even sort of collapses on down to like a dozen lines of code. Okay, some of you are saying, all right, I'm a secret squirrel environment, and you're not going to catch me putting any of my secret data down into my YAML files, because I will be shot, and quite rightly so. Okay, well, there's a couple of options that, there's a few different options. Hiera GPG is an option for that, by which you can actually encrypt the entire YAML file. So unless you've got the key, then you ain't going to be able to see what the actual data is. So you can protect your data in a fairly unflexible fashion by using that. This is sort of kind of been superseded, or just seems to be the preference to use Hiera eYAML these days, which again uses GPG, but will encrypt specific data pairs. So if you've got a YAML file that's got 30 or 40 different data pairs in it, you can just encrypt the answer to specific items. So it's far more granular. So that might be useful in some circumstances. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. Yeah. So in closing, if you ever find yourself with your Puppet modules, you're going down and putting together complex if-then, else-if, blah, 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 then you probably should be thinking about Hiera instead. If you love the concept of centralizing your data, you've got data that needs to go out to buckets and buckets of boxes. You need to only change it in one place, and it then gets replicated out from there. Of course, you can put your YAML files into source control as well, so you can roll back as required. So that's good. If you want to simplify your manifest, make it more supportable, compact, and far more importantly, impress your friends and family, then obviously Hiera is going to be a good call for that. Have you got any questions?
Does it come with sensible defaults for the operating system that companies use? Like, give these examples of in your hierarchy, the operating system,
Yep.
and then a DAO, for example, the DB and that does
Yep.
it come with, the initial example you gave was the web server call and any of those? Or do I have to basically put that all in myself manually?
I'm not 100% certain I follow you. Puppet defaults to nothing. You have to tell it.
Hiera is used to allow you to overcome the slight differences between all these various operating systems and the particular nodes. I'm asking for example, for operating system whether you could use an example if there is Hiera is shipping some sensible default values, for example, for the web server, some other common services that that you typically install?
Hiera actually takes its or the logic that determines where you get the data in the hierarchy is determined by the output of factor.
Yep.
So that's where
The operating system factor that we use seems to be quite sensible to me. Like if I really have 27 different boxes and 3 of them you make that and that's not easy. It would be nice to not having to go in and say Red Hat YAML file and I'm putting the web server names for that. And I've got a debian of YAML file.
Puppet and Hiera know that because of factor, but Hiera doesn't know anything about web servers or anything like that. It's just data hiding.
Okay.
It's definitely just the database storing settings.
That's what I
is it easier?
No. Yes. It's probably easy. Yes, probably no.
It's easy if you know the answer. Yeah.
Does Puppet Labs or has Puppet Lab with partnerships with each of the operating system vendors created an operating specific YAML file that they ship as part of the distribution such that there's a standard schema where the web server is always HTTP on Red Hat and always Apache 2 on Debian? Does that exist? And the answer is probably no.
It's a short answer to no. No, actually, it's not no. It's I don't know. I've never heard of such a thing.
I don't. As a
know
Puppet
that
Enterprise partner,
Yes.
do you think you can make that happen?
So I'm trying to think of another example other than the good old-fashioned Apache one.
Sure.
Is it going to
It
be
sounds
a little bit
complicated,
fun?
right? Because it's like the web server is easy to define, but then
Yep.
we expand that into a standard schema of what?
Yeah. So there's not. I can't think of many other examples where that style of data would be useful.
I think it's package names only.
Yeah, it is.
Configuration file locations between Debian versus Red
Yeah,
Hat.
it's directories, directory structures. I'm going to write a Dear Santa letter. That's probably the best idea, I think. Yeah. Good question. Next. Good question. Yes.
So Salt has a very similar system that exposes the pattern of template language, so you can do like conditional logic or you can like type or whichever. Do you have the same level of flexibility?
Can't speak from a Salt perspective.
It can be like
Yeah, absolutely. You can do templates, which are just static files. If you want, you can put in facts inside there, so it's like Ruby-based logic inside the template files to be able to do conditional stuff, such that you can do things like create vhosts. You know, it digs around and it will determine what the operating system is, and do all that magic. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just trying this out there. I've seen at least 2 companies where they write their own custom packages. And the beauty of a custom package is you can have dependencies.
Yep.
So you're saying, how do I make sure that the web server gets installed? Well, there's this thing called the package manager that knows about dependencies, and when you install this package, it will always install the web server. And there you say, well, hang on a minute, we've got Debian and we've got Red Hat. Well, of course, you build a package for Debian, you build a package for Red Hat. And anyway, you're going to end up in this situation where they're different, right? Yep. So you're going to write different scripts anyway. Might as well put them in different packages. It's kind of organized. And you can hand the Debian one to a guy who knows what he's doing with Debian, and hand the Red Hat one to a guy who knows what he's doing with Red Hat. And it kind of breaks down quite neatly. You said, like, how do I make sure Telnet's not installed?
Mm-hmm.
You can tell the package manager that you don't like Telnet and you won't install it unless Telnet's gone.
Yeah.
And package manager does all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then Debian, not so much in Red Hat, but in Debian you have DebCon, which is a database. It's not quite a hierarchical database, it's more flat.
Maybe if I can just sort of suggest,
Tell me,
if there's a package called Telnet and you've got it on this thing which is running OS X, or you've got it running, there's a package called Telnet on AIX, and one on Solaris, and one on HPUX. Now, the beauty with, I'm assuming configuration management in general, but definitely Puppet, You only need to know what you want to do. You don't need to know how to do it. So I can write a manifest, which is going to be let's, for the sake of arguing, we're going to say it's identical. An identical thing which says remove telnet. And it knows how to run all of those commands against all of the units and the Linux flavors without you mucking around. It's exactly the same code, cross-platform. So that's definitely a little advantage, for using.
Rather than building a package.
Rather than doing.
Platform. Yeah.
I'm not arguing with your dependencies. If you want to install a dev or an RPM, you can build up your spec files that have got all your dependencies. Well, all Puppet's doing is it's using that package manager you were talking about under the hood. So if you've got your spec file with all your deps already in there, then Puppet will work natively anyway with no additional.
Sure, but then I just say install my app that does everything package, and it goes done. And I'll install. I'll install one package. I can put that in Kickstart file.
So this sounds like a perfect discussion to have during the break about whether we need configuration management.
Yeah. Or you've got configuration manager, it's just in a package.
Sure.
It's just where it is anyway.
So let's totally have that discussion
After this.
I'd be willing to have a chat with that.
Yeah, I'm just like, no, come on, hurry up. Alrighty.
Right, any other questions?
So, curiosity, you got the hierarchy structure uses, just to say, for instance, data center, operating system,
Yep.
and environment.
Do I have a cheeky suggestion for you? Is that what you're
Well,
going to
no, actually not that. I'm just going to something else that goes off from, it's also another construction that starts off with environment and, you can
Yeah, that one crowd.
How does it resolve, like, which one to go to? Does it tap itself or it goes, chucking that to the solution space?
It starts from the top and it works its way down in your hire.yaml file, in the hierarchy. It'll just start from the top and it'll work its way down. And it will expand out all of the facts on the
If
fly.
I've got two directories, I can go to two different directories, they'll match all the facts, but in order.
The hierarchy, although the first match,
First match and that one.
it won't find its space.
So doing things in order is a
Don't
logical
go
one.
there.
You do need to,
So like
You've been
this
reading
thing
the
is
you do need to
a way
consider
that
it in
goes
order.
through and-
Let's say something creative, different hierarchy.
That's
the same element.
Whichever one gets hit first, that's the one. That's the winner.
Maybe we should write directions in order. Like, number one, go to,
Alrighty.
Now I'm being
Right, thank you very much, Stephen.
Well, good, you're welcome.